Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Anthony James, coming to you today from the Thai Yoga Center and the SomaVeda College of Natural Medicine in Brooksville, Florida. It is Saturday, April 18th, and today is lecture number 4, or lesson number 4, going through the textbook here, SomaVeda, the Bio-Tapp, BET manual, touch, balance, and attunement technique. In lesson 3, we got mostly through page 56, but I'm going to pick up at the bottom of page 56, and we're just going to see how far we can get in the time that we have here today. So reading from the bottom of page 56, keep hydrated with good water and micronutrients and electrolytes. Salt water internally and on the surface of the skin conducts microcurrents and electromagnetic fields and currents. Dehydration is a factor in many forms of illness and imbalance. It defeats the proper functioning of the immune system and is a factor in edema and metabolism in the body. It's not enough just to have water. We need to make sure we have a sustainable source of micronutrients, such as trace minerals, to furnish all the cofactors necessary for optimal health. This includes all 92 trace minerals, including 200 micrograms of selenium, trace mineral selenium, for example, to target and reduce potential and actual cancer risk. All right, let me go back over the water thing just a little bit. All right, so a couple of points. Number 1, to be emotionally stable, to be mentally healthy, to be psychologically balanced and strong, we have to be hydrated. How about that? We have to have adequate water. We have to have good water. That's water that is not contaminated with fluorine and chloride and agricultural runoff, bio-waste, so on and so forth. If you don't have access to a freshwater well that's clean, then you have to filter your water. Bottled water comes with another set of risks, but it's better than contaminated water, overtly contaminated water. In bottled water, we're concerned with xenoestrogen plasticizers, which upset endocrine function and balance, and that also has an impact on emotional and mental and psychological process. But just water alone, and actually we prefer spring water, and if you don't have access to good spring water, and the reason for that, of course, is because good spring water is chock full of minerals, because that's where it comes from. It comes from aquifers that are storage reservoirs, if you will, in rock. And so that rock dissolves and those minerals are carried to the surface through the well. For example, here at the Thai Yoga Center, we have a deep well into aquifer, and the water is amazingly clean and is chock full of good minerals. All right. If your water doesn't have minerals, or you don't have access to water with minerals, then you need a trace mineral supplement. That's like fulvic humic blend, humic minerals, because this is going to give you the 92 trace elements or trace minerals that you're going to need for all of the endocrine and all of the metabolic functions. And just to keep reiterating the point, I've said it before, I'll say it again, that part of what helps us to maintain emotional harmony, emotional balance, emotional equilibrium is nutritional, and water is nutritional. Water is biological. Water is chemical. Water is electrochemical. So I mentioned here that there's salt water, that the mineral salts move out of the body when we sweat onto the surface of the skin, and that also conducts microcurrents of electromagnetic fields. Okay, that's part of both how we project energy from our body and how we receive frequencies and energy from our body. Okay, part of the process. Dehydration is a factor in many forms of illness and imbalance. Biologic illness, metabolic illness, organ failure, and not to mention mental illness. Dehydration, if you're severely dehydrated, for example, you could become schizophrenic, you could hallucinate, you could become irrational, you could lose touch with reality at the same time as you're becoming hyperinflamed and edemic, and you start to have organ failure. So dehydration is a big factor. Also trace mineral selenium, not alone because of its metabolic effects and support of mental health, but in the fact that it also supports a well-functioning immune system. And see, I want to say this, one of the, if you want to call it, symptoms of an immune system that is overburdened or is not functioning 100% up to par is depression, is anxiety, is psychic disturbance. Our body only has so many ways to communicate with us, only has so many ways to talk to us, to tell us that something is not right. And one of the right functions of emotions, emotional distortion, is communication from the organs and from the tissues and from metabolic systems and endocrine system in the body to inform us that we are under stress, that we're under metabolic stress, that we're under chemical stress, we're dehydrated, we're deficient with minerals, and also if we're those things, I can guarantee that you're also toxic, because proper hydration is part of the elimination function of removing excess toxins of every kind from your body. Internally means to work or make disciplined efforts from the inside out. Practice exercises and meditations, if you will, to promote observation and will of attention. These can be anything which achieve the result, whether considered traditional or not. We're in a unique time in history where we have an opportunity to literally invent exercises without being bound by dogma and outmoded systems. However, there's a caveat. Exercises and the states they engender must still be qualified against the measuring stick of what is productive and useful. Otherwise, it could be just glamour and entertainment, locking us into sleep, negativity, and imbalanced patterns. Pranayama and Kriya Yoga are good examples of possibly effective work. However, these should only be practiced under competent instruction, as they also can cause harm or imbalance if not performed correctly. These types of exercises can help to coordinate and tie in external work with internal work. So exercise is an intermediate influence to tie nutrition to state of mind. So physical being, physical movement, physical exercise, intentional suffering of physical stress on the body, martial arts, yoga, and so on. Even calisthenics, even weightlifting, load-bearing exercise at the gym can do this. But what that exercise does is that it takes a lot of the factors of nutrition, and then it stimulates the body to properly use them and properly distribute them while flushing the tissues with rich circulatory fluids, while removing toxins and toxicity. And again, part of the benefit of this is a more stable emotional environment. Sometimes we refer to this as like the runner's high, but of course runners aren't the only ones who get the endorphins and get the mental high that comes from exercise. But what I want to communicate though is that this mental high is not just mental. It actually starts in organic process of metabolism, chemistry, bioelectricity, the expression of electromagnetic fields in the body, and as the tissues and processes conform to these frequencies, a feeling of wellness may be more likely to be experienced. For lack of these processes, we will be depressed or anxious. In other words, it can go either way. All exercises and activities are to create or support specific states of mind, which represent electrical fields, harmonics and subharmonics, conducive to the right operation of the machine. The physical balancing is specifically to reduce the impingement of negative waveform aggregates local. These aggregates appear in practical terms as negative states of mind, conflict, dissonant thinking, negative emotions, and the expressions of negative emotions such as phobias, nightmares, fears, and various unproductive fixations and emotional vexations. Altogether, we could call them the residuals of karma. Work occurs from all angles simultaneously towards the center. The center is a clear and unobstructed field of influence called the waking mind in partnership with a balance machine. More simply than this, we could say that the center we work for is a waking state free of the expressions of unreal negativity that include negative attitudes, emotions, phobic states, and all their physiological counterparts. These negative attitudes, emotions, phobic states, and their physiologic biochemical results are basically what we observe as common ailments, disease processes, mental weaknesses, and illnesses. Even many so-called structural or traumatic challenges and health problems still occur in the same way as eventual adaptations to pre-existing, anomalous, and dissonant states of being. For example, many trauma occur as a result of accidents. Yes? Would you agree with that? Many types of trauma occur as a result of accidents, or they are the results of accidents. Yes? So many of these accidents are considered to be avoidable. So why were they not avoided? Why did we not see stop or slow down when it would have been prudent to do so? Much emotional trauma, for example, is interpersonal. What keeps us from being able to communicate compassionate and diplomatic that we are, or what we mean? Or what crafts the abusive personality? Many illnesses are caused or related to long-term malnutrition. Why do we not simply acknowledge this and make nutrition a basic part of every person's education? More than this, why do we not follow the sensible prescriptions and take supplements? Eat the quality food, drink the good water. There's no end to this line of questioning. However, the answer is still pretty simple. Expedience and the nominal functioning of mechanical persons who have nothing else are masters of going with the flow. But in this day and age, where underlying health conditions can kill you or can lead to your early demise by a random infection, going with the flow should no longer be an option. And if not for us, we must hammer it with our children that to have a long life, to be able to survive in a world full of pandemics and epidemics and other forms of stress, infections and infectious disease and so on, it is absolutely imperative to do everything that we can at all times to remain as stably healthy as we possibly can. Going with the flow is just simply not an option anymore. The problem is that the flow of nominal human consciousness is leading us towards precipice of pain and suffering in every way conceivable. To wake up and move against the tide has to be the hardest work any of us will ever conceive or do, and many will not be successful. It is hard work to take care of yourself. It is almost impossible without education. And how many people do you know are really thoroughly educated in the fundamentals of health and well-being, mind, body, and spirit? How many medical professionals, including maybe you, how much time in hardcore education, practice, clinicals, and experience have you spent, or were you required to spend, in order to be able to call yourself a medical professional? The average medical professional has just a few hours of the kind of education I'm discussing here. The forces and pressure to encourage us to follow the sleepy norm are enormous, and to resist them we need help. Help comes in the form of flesh and blood persons, teachers, schools, communities, working in cooperation to become significant, and maybe to eventually to be able to change something critical in a good way and in a way that will endure. Again, SomaVeda, integrated traditional therapies, Thai yoga, comprehensive system of indigenous traditional medicine. It is a holistic practice. It is a practice of mind, spirit, and body. Even in an emphasis which is on tapping, okay, on mechanical process of tapping and affirmations to balance the energy, to release the cause of negative emotions, to correct the cause of negative emotions, still has to address the physical tissue that these emotions are occurring in, still has to address the underlying health conditions that the tissue is experiencing, of which the negative emotions such as fears and phobias are more indicators of imbalance than actual imbalances themselves. Remember our declaration statement, the cause of all negative emotions is an imbalance in the body's electrical system. And this also correlates with many, many traditions. I mentioned this earlier in one of the other lectures. For example, in Chinese medicine, we have the 6 hollow and the 6 solid organs, liver, spleen, kidney, large and small intestine, etc., etc. And each of them has a personality of emotional expression, negative and positive. And we traditionally associate, for example, unreasonable, irrational anger with an imbalance in the liver. So what we do is we don't necessarily tell the person who is expressing the unreasonable, the rage, to just stop it. That as a therapeutic process, what we want to do is look at them from the point of view of what's going on with their liver and what's going on with the factors that support a properly functioning liver, and can those be corrected, and to then do the corrections that we want to do, and lo and behold, the person has less rage, less anger, is more rational, is more easygoing and compassionate, is less inclined to be violent, etc., etc., less inclined to be criminal, less inclined to be rude to animals or old ladies crossing the street or old teachers crossing the street. Just by balancing the liver, getting the liver in shape, okay? Premise number 17. We are working for the past, the now, and the future. We're working for the past, the now, and the future. By working in this fashion, we hope to reconcile and to harmonize the effects of past discord and trauma in order to have a direct impact on reducing unnecessary suffering in the present time. All right, get this. This is really important. The origin of virtually all negative emotional symptoms and energy imbalance is in the past. Modern quantum physicists have the theory that time, what we call linear time, as most people know it, does not exist. That in fact, it is an illusion, a misconception based on a limitation of viewpoint. The past, present, and future are concurrent variations of perception of the now. The universe is not really past, present, and future. It simply is. We understand this to mean, in our lives, the past and the effects originating in the past are concurrent in some way with our current perception of now. We also understand that our future is concurrent as well. By changing, releasing, balancing the disruptions of energy originating in the past experience, we cause real-time changes to our current condition. In other words, we are different now. By being different now, we are also creating the template of possibility of being entirely different in the future at the same moment. Our future self is concurrent. Our future self is here now. The Metta Sutra, a Buddha Dhamma mantra called the Metta Sutra, reflects a similar understanding when it so clearly states, "May I no longer participate in the origination cycle of the creation of suffering for myself and for others." This statement may also be seen as referring to the principle of karma. However, to no longer participate in the creation cycle of suffering requires one to be different entirely. To be different entirely means we have to undo those karmic bounds, those karmic bonds, the patterns of imbalance which form the basis of our existing self and state of being. And I want to say this also, our personalities are also greatly defined by our old unresolved negative emotional issues or NEMOs. And we have to undo those. We have to rewrite the underlying patterns to be different now in order to be different in the future. By literally time traveling to unwind cords of disharmony in the past, which is what we're doing when we're tapping on old unresolved negative emotional issues, we lighten the load we are dealing with in the present now, the right now. Working from the past issues is necessary to be present in the present moment with our burden of accumulated trauma that unresolved issues place on us every moment. That is the forest for the trees. By working in the now, we avoid recreating, regenerating, and causing the same type of harm and issues that were visited upon us in and from the past. We hope to create something that will persist, even possibly after the physical death of the machine. Native American cultures, for example, speak of working for 7 generations. We are in the bardo now, so to speak, and wish to make further progress in our life and afterlife. This could also be a metaphor for the present existence. 7 generations could be taken as 7 chakra cycles, 7 Saturn returns, 7 ages of man, or 7 expressions of our life from our earliest childhood to the present life we have now to our future life. This idea of time traveling is really powerful. There is an idea which has been fostered upon us by what I call chaotic psychiatry, that we're formed psychologically in stone, and that it is literally impossible to change our fundamental premise of our psychology. And in Oriental tradition, Native American medicine, classical Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, all of these systems say, well, that's not true. They say it's not true. In other words, they fundamentally disagree with that. All of them say that who we are as people in life is mutable, is changeable. Every single one of these systems gives many, many examples of this, and also creates many different methodologies to get to the same place, which is the intentionally crafted being, the emergence of a self-defined, transfigured, transformative state of being, sometimes called enlightened being, sometimes called born again, sometimes called a new man. Every one of these traditions say that it's possible, and they give methodologies. What we're trying to do in this BET is to look at all of these, and through a process of synthesis and synergism, coupled with understanding of modern medicine and science and physics, like quantum physics, to come up with a modern understanding of really effective tools that we can use to transform ourselves into the person that we dream that we could be sooner than later, and that we could have a trajectory toward becoming that person in our own skin that is self-determined and can happen within the lifetime that we're currently living. Okay, I'm going to move on. Page 61, premise number 18. The work continues after you die. We cannot be certain of the actual progress of our partners in and during their life and practice. We acknowledge that there may be a period of instability immediately following the death of the machine. We will endeavor and make reasonable efforts to support our partners and others with post-passing balancing by way of readings, recitation of the Bardo Thoda, the Clear Light Meditation, or guidebook for the newly deceased. The guidebook traditionally in the Buddhist tradition is known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I'm saying many things here. One is that, yes, it is possible to affect the energy of the newly deceased in a positive way. We are still connected for a short time. And if one is paying attention, there is an opportunity to do something significant. And I mean to do this literally. Even in the Christian tradition, there is this concept of purgatory, and there is this concept of transition after passing before one, quote unquote, goes to heaven to be with the Lord. And during that time, you can make prayers for the newly deceased. You can make affirmations, visualizations, and you can actually participate in the progress of the newly deceased to maybe make it a little less stressful for them, to maybe help them to find their intermediate guides, whether they're called deities or angels or Buddhas or what have you, spirit guides. Many traditions have this concept. So the idea being we're still connected for a short time. If one is paying attention, there's an opportunity to do something literally significant. We're also, hang with me for a minute. I know especially some of you might be a little offended at this idea of the Bardo concept, but also I want to use the Bardo as a metaphor for this current life, not necessarily literal death. We also say for the purpose of argument that the Bardo state is a metaphor for the here and now. We are in the Bardo now, in this life. The problem is that we don't know it. If one of the prerequisites for getting through the Bardo is the recitation and acknowledgement of specific mantra, which clearly demonstrate specific and required states of being, then the time to look for them is not, how did you get in here? Oh, how did you get in here? I had her locked out.
I just put her in here just a few minutes ago.
Okay, 28 minutes and 21 seconds into my lecture. I'm going to try and continue, even though my dear soul Maggie is causing a disruption back here. She's wanting to participate in the discussion, I guess. Where was I? The problem is that we don't know it. If one of the prerequisites for getting through the Bardo is the recitation and acknowledgement of specific mantra, which clearly demonstrate specific and required states of being, then the time to look for them is not after you're dead. Think, I do for you as I do for myself, i.e. your progress is also my progress. As in premise 18, we may figuratively die many times in this current manifestation of life, and something of substance may continue from figurative rebirth to rebirth. Even if you don't believe in the Bardo or life after death, then at least have in mind the idea of karma or cause and effect principle of life. If we can agree that much of what we have to deal with today actually is derived from thoughts, actions, deeds in the past, we see ourselves as part of that process, then everything we can do in the moment to break, to refocus, to redirect harmful energies, however they manifest, will have a beneficial effect on the future. This beneficial effect, like the ripple in a pond, expands much beyond the apparent boundaries of our life. If you just take the past, present, and future states of being as consecutive states that one would experience altogether in one or this present life, the end result is the same. I want to say this one more time. One of the keys to creating the possibility of emotionally being a different person is to resolve the issues of the past that remain unresolved. Doesn't make them not have happened. If there was a trauma, an incident, some kind of abuse or what have you, violence, rape, incest, whatever it was, doesn't make it not have happened, okay? It changes energetically, electrically, emotionally, the way that you relate to it in such a way that that energy is no longer acting as an energy trap, as an ether trap, to suck the life out of you and to keep you from being able to be responsive and to be clear-minded and to have a balanced state of mind currently. So we work on the past. In the moment, I want to acknowledge that I am creating karma now. I'm creating independent origination of future emotional states that I'm going to be experiencing, future emotional buffers, future emotional issues, future fears, future phobias, future organic physical diseases that I'm going to be subject to. I am creating the possibility of them, the underlying issues that will lead to their manifestation right now, this minute, in real time. To whatever degree I can change that right now in real time, I will have an intentional effect on those future outcomes. So there we go, past, present, and future. Premise number 19. Advanced teaching includes study of symbols. Advanced teaching includes the study of symbols in art, icons, and myth, as they are metaphors for electrical field states and harmonics as experienced by the human essence or spirit in transition. Ayurveda yantra, such as the symbols for the chakra, Tibetan mandala, or the Bardal Thodal, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and similar works, or the American Book of the Dead by E.J. Gold, and similar works of known and unknown origin are gold mines for such insight and information. Additionally, great art from any generation can have similar effects. Symbols, art, and icons have the capacity to reach past the nappy gatekeepers. These are these mindless attitudes which are based on old unresolved negative emotions. Sometimes I call them the nappy gatekeepers because they're asleep, they're reactive, they're mechanical, they're not intentional or conscious design. And affect and stimulate the changes in the deeper parts of us, parts not normally under our conscious control or awareness. The use of metaphors speaks to us without engaging the lower parts of the intellectual and emotional centers. We have different energetic centers. In Ayurveda, we attempt to discuss and to describe them when we speak about the Tridosha and about the 7 chakras. And we talk about how each chakra is equivalent to having a psychology, has a physiology, has a physical mechanical expression, has an energetic expression, has a polarity expression. But it has lower parts and has higher parts. I'm not going to go into the theory of chakras here in great detail. I do that in another course under Khorsat astrology. But the chakras are metaphors. And by studying sacred art and sacred symbols, okay, from almost any culture, there is inculcated information in those symbols which speaks to parts of us that are not controlled by the more conscious and yet lower energy parts like the organs, for example. Premise number 20. We choose to live and be this experience. We chose to manifest in this world of existence to gain the possibility of this experience of life. We are here to work, and we are not working alone. I also like to say, if there is such a thing as corporate consciousness, one of the caveats we agreed upon manifesting was that no one gets out until everyone gets out. Avatar Rishi, Rinpoche Buddha, Bodhisattva, Transfigured Jesus after the cross, Illuminati all beg the question, why come back? In other words, metaphorically, metaphysically, allegorically, we're talking about ancient sages that become transfigured, beings of light, and had the ability to leave this realm. And yet, they didn't. They came back. Why? To work so hard and long, to be free of the bonds of earth, mechanicality, and the burdens of karma and ego, to then, post-transition and post-transfiguring ascension, to turn about and come back universally to do what? To help us? Again, I say why? A work premise is that this is hypothetical at best, because only the ascendant transfigured being could rightfully say for sure. But the practical answer is that if in fact they do come back, it's because they have to. Our collective consciousness is bound together via the shared electrical fields that generate them in the first place. When the Tibetan Buddhists pray for the freedom of suffering and the eventual enlightenment of all living beings, they really mean it. No one prays for this more than the reincarnated Bodhisattva and Rinpoches who know the true conditions of freedom, that no one is truly free until everyone is free. Pray for the liberation of all living beings. If you knew this or believed this simple truth in your bones, regardless of what your religious background is, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Native American, would you live, act, think, or be any different? You would if you could, but that brings us back to doing. So in all honesty, we don't do because we are limited by not being able to do. Freedom is for those who can do. This system is, therefore, as much about freedom as anything else on a practical level. And I describe SomaVeda and any other thing that's like it as systems of freedom. Systems which give us the possibility of stepping out of the constricture of any form of tyranny, whether it is the tyranny of pain, whether it is the tyranny of confusion, whether it is the tyranny of medical malpractice, whether it is the tyranny of political oppression, whether there is the tyranny of societal dysfunction and oppression, the tyranny of the consequences of rampant pollution, global warming, deforestation, radiation exposure from nuclear accidents and misadventure, pollution, etc., etc., etc. Or just the tyranny of our bad acts to one another. If you knew or believed this simple truth in your bones, that no one is truly free until everyone is free, you would get off of it and you would get on to it. Premise number 21. The matrix body holds the key to the invisible world. Energy-based theories such as chakra, sen, meridian, nadi, marma, loam, windgate, and corresponding psychology are hypothetical models for how the chronic or chief negative features. By the way, when I say work, when I say chief negative features, when I talk about these things, those are references to my book, Angels Speak, and to the concepts and premises and the discussions of fourth way ideas and related ideas that I elaborate on in the big book called Angels Speak, which you can you should have access to on Bearded Media or Amazon or directly through us. Just sidebar, when I say chief negative feature, I discuss that in detail in Angels Speak. These are hypothetical models how the chronic chief negative feature manifests in a given person. The interaction between the matrix body and the tangible physical body, interacting and adapting to our life environment, creates what I call the ego effect. Even though I disagree with Sigmund Freud, Freudian psychology, Carl Jung, I think they were way off base, had some good ideas, had some bad ideas, but I really believe their drug-addled, confused mind, clouded with their own unresolved negative emotional issues, led them to create a system of psychiatry, psychoanalysis, and psychology that has caused more harm in the world than maybe any other thing. It's the basis of eugenics in the modern age, and we disavow any relationship to that type of psychology. We're talking more of an energy-based psychology. Remember, the cause of all negative emotions is a disruption in the body's electrical system. So the interaction between the matrix body and the tangible physical body, interacting and adapting to our life environment, creates the ego. So that's what I say the ego is. The ego is a personality constructs and the like. Most of the time, except in rare circumstances, these separate personalities manifesting the ego are invisible to us. They are hidden to us. However, we've been given literal roadmaps describing the hidden features in order to allow us to better work and understand ourselves and others. Sidebar, I hope you caught that. They, in other words, there's more than one ego. There's more than one chief negative feature. There's more than one underlying psychological construct. And these individual psychological constructs, literally different identities, are situational and environmentally based. So that's their primary determinant. And as long as they are manifesting in the appropriate environment, nobody notices. It's only when these ego psychological constructs, these aggregate psychological constructs, begin to manifest in inappropriate environments and situations that we even notice at all. And then we might throw labels at them like schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder and so on. I may come back to this later, but the bottom line is, in energy psychology, we believe that there are multiple personalities, that everybody has a multiple personality disorder. You have multiple personality disorder, whether you're on medication or not, whether you've been diagnosed psychologically, psychiatrically with that or not. If nothing else, it should give you a little more compassion for those poor souls who've received this awful diagnosis. Premise number 22. We're fundamentally, literally, energy. A human being is an energy or electrical field within a larger energy electrical field called biological life. Quantum physics gives us the idea that there's actually nothing that's not entirely made up of energy. If energy is all there is, then as part of all there is, we are energy too. A gentleman, a physicist that I listen to quite a bit, Dr. Bruce Lipton, in a lecture I was listening to earlier today, reminded me of something I was aware of. We've all heard of the EEG, where the electroencephalograph, where we take, it could be anywhere from a couple to 100 electrodes and place them on a cap or around on a strap or around our head, and we can then measure the electrical fields of energy that the brain is producing, and we can actually create pictures and waveforms and an idea of what the brain is actually doing. Okay, these electrodes are usually they're attached directly to the skin or scalp, and in some extreme cases they actually drill holes in the cranium and place the electrodes in the brain directly. Well, That's old school. That's out of date. That's old fashioned. Got to move on. Why? We're now in the era of quantum physics. And we now have MEGs, not EEGs, MEGs, magnetic, okay, encephalograms. And the electrodes don't even touch the head. They're distant. They're off the cranium. There's no physical contact. And so from some distance away from your cranium, you can get all the same information that they were getting from the direct contact electrical interface without the direct contact electrical interface, and they can now map out the brain function and more, because they're using fluctuations in both electrical, magnetic, and other quantum fields to give them better pictures of what's going on inside the brain. So basically what that is telling us is that our thoughts are not contained within our head. Our thoughts are not contained within the body. That the energy that we call thoughts, whatever that is, however you want to quantify it, is not localized to where you find yourself. Thoughts have wings. Napoleon Hill said that many, many years ago. Thoughts have wings. This is not new information. The idea that we can now quantify it scientifically and can measure it scientifically and can build apparatus to give us insight scientifically on something that literally 20 years ago would have been called magic, would have been called something not nice, okay, is profound. But it's only possible because fundamentally we're energy. The trick is, because we are the energy, we don't see it. Again, that's that forest for the trees metaphor. Premise number 23. Premise number 23. All is God, all is energy, all is electrical, all is consciousness. I'll say it again. All is God, all is energy, all is electrical, all is consciousness. There is nothing that is outside of that equation. There is nothing that that equation is not relative to. Ancient teachings of traditional Chinese medicine say we are part of a trigram which squarely places humankind between the twin influences of heaven and earth. The first trigram, heaven, man, earth, is the first of 64 trigrams, making up the lexicon or library of the I Ching, made famous by the ancient Chinese historical figure Lao Tzu. This is similarly stated in many other ancient traditions in school, as well as such as Indian Ayurveda. In Ayurveda, mankind is described as a vessel, a pathway or conduit, a tube of communication between the twin male and female primordial influences of Purusha and Prakriti, i.e. heaven and earth. The manifestation of the harmonious terrestrial and celestial forces are being disrupted, fractured, or separated by the ego. One Vedic teacher of mine, actually his name was Dr. Pillai, described the common origin of all disease, illness, and suffering as simply being separated from the direct personal knowledge of God consciousness by ego. We say there is a God for each kind of man or machine, and the closest ordinary man comes to direct personal experience of God consciousness is an experience of pure or true essence. If there is a more or greater experience of God realization than this, we will have to get to the pure and true manifestation of undefiled essence to be able to see it. Normally, we don't talk of deities much, as work is better served by focusing on what is directly experienced and verifiable at any given moment. Native American traditions portray or show us as upright, two-legged, walking between Father Sky and Mother Earth, Ate and Ina, in the company of all living beings, Mitakuias o Yasin. These traditions in their own way seek to explain and make use of the observed fact that we exist in the greater fields and energies of the world around us, and that there is polarity, either masculine or feminine, as characteristic of the interplay between these two great forces. It is polarity which is mirrored between our own makeup and constitutions. It is polarity, plus or minus, male or female, heaven or earth, that sets, establishes, and differentiates the order, place, and hierarchy, and eventual function of all things. To the subatomic level, everything has either polarity or is made up of elements which do have polarity. It is this polarity which is the basis for electricity. Everything that there is, from solid matter to light, follows this principle. And electricity can manifest as magnetic field, electricity can manifest as plasma, electricity can manifest as the skin of your hand. Everything is electrical. The difference between things is found on the electromagnetic continuum, i.e., some particles or waveforms move relatively faster or slower in reference to one another, and as these faster or slower particles or waveforms travel, they travel coherently in predictable patterns or interference patterns called waves. In the new quantum physics, the traditional model of matter being made up of individual subatomic particles called atoms, neutrons, protons, quarks, all circling one another with 99% of their orbits being made up of empty space, has gone by the wayside. I hope you understand that. That model of the physics of the universe, the atomic model that we were taught starting in high school and then in college, probably elementary school now, it's no longer valid. It's no longer considered accurate or even a scientific way to describe that which makes us up at the most elemental level. There are new theories postulating that there are no orbits and there is no empty space. The organization of subatomic structure now appears to be seen as more wave patterns with resonance, interference, and affinity characteristics determining fundamental structure and organization. Our understanding is concurrent with this new view. These waves have form and substance and affect or impact one another and create effects called harmonics and resonances and interference patterns, which add to, take away from, or vary the shape and action of the waves. Everything that exists is a byproduct of these interactions, including us, including every feeling, including every thought, including every attitude, every condition or state that we might experience in this life. Our essence, being organic, our physicality, as well as everything that exists in our world, is energetic and electrical in this fashion. This is what Ayurveda refers to when it states, originating out of the formless, the primordial sound, vibration Om, originates all that there is. Om is or represents the primordial or original electrical vibrational nature of the universe and is a representation of everything. Everything that follows the primordial Om is but differentiations in this fundamental electrical nature of the universe. Fields within fields, waves interacting with waves, based on affinity principles and patterns generated by polarity and frequency, amplitude, and all principles of the quantum atomic electromagnetic world. When we say all is God, all is energy, all is electrical, all is consciousness, we may be approximating the truth of our nature. And it's not new. Only our understanding of these principles might be new to us. Principle 24. Energy precedes physiology. Now I'm going to give you a formula to create the life, inner life, outer life, that you believe that you should have, that you believe you deserve, that you want, whether you need it or not. I'm going to give you a formula for how to do that. Premise number 24. There is no physicality or organic physiology, biology, or chemistry without energy. Literally, energy in some form is the precursor to everything that is, ever was, will, or might be. So, actually, energy precedes physiology is only a part of the larger concept. This concept is derived from Ayurveda and relates to the original or cosmic consciousness. As quoted from the book Lines, Wheels, and Points, now called Ayurveda of Thailand, Religious Therapeutics, by me, cosmic consciousness preceding manifestation leads us to a formula. Past actions or original inclinations, in Thai called kama or karma, precede energy elements, and energy elements precede physiology or matter elements. We could also say that acknowledgments precede intention, and intention precedes extension and or affirmation, and affirmation precedes action, and action leads to manifestation. All right, let me say this one more time. Past actions or original inclinations, karma, precede energy elements. And energy elements precede physiology or matter elements. In fact, in Ayurveda we say physiology or matter elements are the coalescing of energy, of the five energies: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Chinese medicine, we say matter, energy and matter elements are the coalescing or the interaction of the five elements, which are fire, air, metal, water, earth. We could also say that acknowledgement, which is a process, precedes intention. Intention precedes extension or affirmation, and affirmation precedes action, and action leads to manifestation. So you got to be right from the beginning. You got to be able to do, to be able to affirm, to be able to acknowledge, to be able to craft a long thought of intention, to hold that long thought and intention long enough to make it an affirmation, and then couple that affirmation with action in order to generate the process of manifestation. Okay, premise number 25, still page 67. The cause of all negative emotion is disruption of the body's energy system. Negative emotions are symptoms of imbalance and or disruption in the matrix body or the body's energy system. These imbalances, which can cause negative emotional symptoms, can range from lack of harmony between the organs to excesses or deficiencies between the chakra or between the many secondary and tertiary energy points that we call lom, marma lines, nadi, meridians, and others. Imbalance is usually the result of some harmful influence originating either from outside the person or from within. Imbalance can also be the result of trauma or discord and frustration in the expression of one's nature, especially in regard to sexual being. Negative emotions can be both a cause and an effect of physical distortion and armoring of the tissue. Negative emotion can be released or corrected by balancing the body's energy system. Okay, I want to come back and talk about this premise number 5 more, but I feel like I've covered a lot of issues very deeply here that you might want to run back and review some of this tape and read over the section again, maybe go to Angel Speak and look up some of the words or concepts that I've used here for further clarification. And so I'm going to bow out. I want to say thank you so much for spending an hour with me today and learning more and mastering energy psychology, EFT, BET, and being able to bring this helpful, this amazingly helpful therapy both to yourself, to your family, to your patients, and to your community with greater sense of understanding and confidence. Again, I'll say it, if you have any questions, you want to make some comments or get further insight on any point that I've raised in this lesson, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm easy to find. God bless and have a terrific day.